Swallowing, or deglutition, is the process by which food passes from the mouth through the pharynx and into the esophagus. As simple as it might seem to healthy people, swallowing is actually a very complex action that requires an extremely precise coordination with breathing, since both of these processes share the same entrance, the pharynx. Failure to coordinate would result in choking or pulmonary aspiration. Swallowing involves over 20 muscles of the mouth, throat, and esophagus, which are controlled by several cortical areas and by the swallowing centers in the brainstem. The brain communicates with the muscles through several cranial nerves. Swallowing consists of 3 phases. Oral or buccal phase. This is the voluntary part of swallowing. The food is moistened with saliva and chewed. Food bolus is formed, and the tongue pushes it to the back of the throat, the pharynx. This process is under neural control of several areas of cerebral cortex, including the motor cortex. Pharyngeal phase starts with stimulation of tactile receptors in the oropharynx by the food bolus. The swallow reflex is initiated and is under involuntary neuromuscular control. The following actions are taken to ensure the passage of food or drink into the esophagus. The tongue blocks the oral cavity to prevent going back to the mouth. The soft palate blocks entry to the nasal cavity. The vocal folds close to protect the airway to the lungs. The larynx is pulled up with the epiglottis flipping over, covering the entry to the trachea. This is the most important step since entry of food or drink into the lungs may potentially be life-threatening. The upper esophageal sphincter opens to allow passages to the esophagus. Esophageal phase. Food bolus is propelled down the esophagus by peristalsis, a wave of muscular contraction that pushes the bolus ahead of it. The larynx moves down back to the original position.
Regulation of stomach secretion is divided into 3 phases: cephalic, gastric, and intestinal. In the cephalic phase, the taste or smell of food, tactile sensation of food in the mouth, or thought of food, sends nervous impulses to the medulla oblongata. These impulses cause parasympathetic neurons via the vagus nerves to stimulate secretion of hydrochloric acid and pepsin in the stomach. The parasympathetic stimulation also results in secretion of gastrin from the lower part of the stomach. This hormone travels through the bloodstream and further stimulates hydrochloric acid and pepsin secretion in the upper and middle parts of the stomach. In the gastric phase of gastric secretion, food has entered and distended the stomach. This distension activates a parasympathetic reflex via the medulla oblongata and also has a direct stimulatory effect on the gastric glands. The result is continued secretion of hydrochloric acid and pepsin. In the intestinal phase of gastric secretion, chyme has entered the duodenum, so gastric secretion is no longer needed. When the chyme contains lipids from the digestion of fats or contains enough hydrochloric acid to bring its pH below 2, gastric secretion is inhibited. The lipids and hydrogen ions inhibit gastric secretion by 3 simultaneous actions. First, they cause impulses to go to the medulla oblongata to decrease parasympathetic stimulation of the gastric glands. Secondly, they set up local reflexes via neurons in the wall of the gut that decrease gastric secretion. Thirdly, they cause the release of three local hormones which travel via the circulation to the gastric glands and inhibit their secretion.
Salivary amylase begins the breakdown of starch to maltose. Salivary amylase is inactivated by stomach acid. Pancreatic amylase completes the breakdown of starch to maltose in the small intestine. Small intestinal enzymes catalyze reactions, breaking disaccharides into monosaccharides. Sugars and starches are digested and absorbed before entering the large intestine. Fiber resists digestion and is too large to be absorbed as is. Most fiber is secreted in the feces.
We have learned about solutions as a mixture of two or more substances in the same phase. It involves a solute dissolving in a solvent. But some substances simply do not want to associate with one another. As an example, when oil and water are added together, they form two distinct layers. This is because they are immiscible with one another. In other words, they do not mix. Even if you shake these two liquids vigorously, they will still remain immiscible. Let us look closely at what we have right now. There are tiny oil droplets interspersed throughout the water. We have just created an emulsion. What do you think will happen if we let this emulsion stand for 5 to 10 minutes? Let's pause the video and have a think. Press play once you are done. Since oil and water are immiscible, the oil droplets will reform the original layer. Common everyday emulsions include milk, mayonnaise, ice cream, and paint. These emulsions are mostly oil droplets in water. Emulsions can also exist as water droplets in oil. Real-life examples include margarine, lotions, and facial creams. The world's most popular emulsion is, without a doubt, ice cream. The main ingredients are milk or cream and sugar, along with flavoring and coloring components. So what prevents an emulsion, such as ice cream, from separating? Substances known as emulsifiers are added to stabilize emulsions. When making ice cream, egg yolk is commonly added. The active emulsifier in egg yolk is called lecithin. Too little lecithin will cause the ice cream to separate, and too much will ruin its texture and flavor. All emulsifiers have two components, a hydrophilic or water-loving head and a hydrophobic or water-fearing tail. If we added lecithin to our original oil and water emulsion, its hydrophilic head will prefer to associate with water and the hydrophobic tail with the oil droplets. This prevents separation and thus stabilizes the emulsion. In summary, an emulsion is a mixture of two substances that are miscible with one another. These emulsions can be stabilized by adding emulsifiers.
The final stages of food digestion take place in the large intestine, or colon. After nourishment is extracted from what we eat, the leftover waste material mixed with water flows from the small intestine into the colon. After entering the colon, stool loses water as it travels upward through the ascending colon and across the belly through the transverse colon. As water is lost, stool returns from a liquid into a solid as it goes down toward the rectum in the descending colon. Stool is moved through the sections of the colon by waves of squeezing muscles in an action called peristalsis. Constipation can occur if too much water is absorbed from the stool or if peristalsis is slowed down. Many other factors can also play a role, such as a poor diet low in fiber, emotional stress, or other medical conditions.
Sitting on the toilet for long periods of time, straining during bowel movements, and chronic constipation can all put pressure on the veins in your anus and lower rectum. The pressure can inhibit the flow of blood so that the veins bulge or swell, producing the condition known as hemorrhoids. Some hemorrhoids are internal, lying inside the rectum. You can't see or feel them, and since the area lacks pain receptors, they usually don't cause discomfort. Other hemorrhoids, known as external hemorrhoids, develop under the skin around the anus. Pooling blood can form a lump or clot. Straining also sometimes pushes an internal hemorrhoid through the anal opening. These hemorrhoids often itch or bleed, sometimes with severe pain and swelling.